Mislim da možemo sad početi.
I
Evo,
think we
pola
can
9 je
start.
stiglo.
It's
Dobro
9:30.
jutro svima.
Good morning,
Sve vas
everyone.
lijepo pozdravljam i zahvaljujem što ste se
Welcome
priključili
for
na ovaj
coming.
naš
Thank you for
današnji
coming
događaj.
to this event.
Iznimno zadovoljstvo nam je
It's
predstaviti
a great
komparativno
pleasure to
izvješće
represent the
koje smo mi u
comparative
Informativnom pravnom
report
centru
that the
i kolege iz
Information Legal
Amalipe u Bugarskoj
Centers
pripremili na temu
colleagues from
diskriminacije Roma u
Amalipa
našem
and
međutržištu.
Bulgaria prepared
Cilj
on the
našeg
topic of
izvješća je
Roma
sažeti
discrimination in
nalaze
our two
empiričkog
countries. The goal of
istraživanja
this
i
report
analize
is
dokumentacije, kao
to
i
analyze the
pružiti
documentation and
usporedni pregled
research and
položaja Roma u
uh,
Hrvatskoj
give a
i Bugarskoj.
comparative
Dio istraživanja u
overview
Hrvatskoj
of
će vam više
discrimination
kasnije
against
objasniti
Roma in Bulgaria and
kolegica
Croatia.
Češka
The
Cassovich.
research will be represented by
A
my
prošli
colleague
tjedan smo imali
Željka
priliku
later. Last week
sudjelovati na
we had an
konferenciji
opportunity
u
to participate in
organizaciji
a conference
Amalipea
organized
na
by
kojoj je bio predstavljen
Amalipe,
dio istraživanja koji se odnosi na Bugarsku.
uh, where
Sada bih
part of
željela
the research
pozdraviti
related
Andreju
to Bulgaria was
Svislavsku
presented.
iz Rights Plus
I'd like
Bureau.
to greet
Andreja
Andrea
je pravna
Stalski.
savjetnica i
She's
voditeljica
a legal
projekta u
advisor
sklopu kojeg
and
je izvještaj i napisan.
and
Izvolite,
project
Andreja.
leader uh, for making the report. Andrea, please.
Thank you very much. As Natasha mentioned, my name is Andrea Spitalski, and I'm a legal officer at Minority Rights Group Europe. Our organization is based in Budapest. Our office is based in Budapest. We have a sister office in London and one in Uganda, and another one will be active very soon in Brussels as well. Our aim is to protect and promote the rights of minorities and indigenous peoples around the world, and the Europe office works in this region. I would like to say a couple of words about the project. Its name is Equality for Roma through Enhanced Legal Access, ERELA, it's the acronym. It is funded by the European Union's Rights, Equality, Citizenship Program. And we started the implementation in February this year, together with Amalipa in Bulgaria and the Information Legal Center in Croatia. This research and the publication of this report is the very first activity of this project. The aim of the research was to identify those fields in which the Roma most often face discrimination and to identify their obstacles in their access to justice. You will hear from the presentations that discrimination is widespread in both countries, but unfortunately the reporting of these cases is not happening. These cases often go unreported, and we want to know the reasons why it happens in both countries. So that was the aim of this research, which was a combination of desk research and empirical research. So partners organized a series of focus group interviews with various target groups. So there were Roma community focus groups, there were which were only organized for Roma women, civil society organizations, activists, lawyers. You will hear the presentations very soon. I will say a couple of words about the upcoming activities. So once the reports are published, these are also baseline reports for us, actually, just to know the state of play in the two countries. Our partners will hold a series of trainings for lawyers, for civil society organizations, and for Roma activists or mediators. And the aim of the training is to build their capacities about the national and international anti-discrimination legislation, the available legal remedies, and especially how to support the Roma victims of discrimination, how to increase their access to justice, how these discrimination cases could reach the equality bodies. We are very pleased to have here today the Deputy Ombudswoman of the Republic of Croatia, because we would like to cooperate with them very closely in the implementation of this project. And after the trainings, our partners will start to work with Roma mediators in their country. The mediator's role will be to carry out regular field visits and, on the one hand, to raise awareness in the Roma community about their rights, about the available legal remedies, and to report or encourage them to report the cases, and so that they can receive free legal aid from the partners. They will basically link the clients with the partners. who will provide them with free legal aid. And all these activities will be complemented by advocacy at the national, regional, and international level. So partners will prepare shadow reports to various UN treaty bodies. They will organize national and local advocacy meetings with decision makers in order to influence the implementation of the relevant policies. So that's it in a nutshell. I will give back the floor to Natasha. Welcome everyone, and I hope that you will enjoy the discussion and the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for your short description of our activities in our joint project. And now I will give the word to Tatiana Vlasic, the deputy ombudsperson from an institution which we cooperate very closely in the anti-discrimination network. Please forward. Thank you. Good day to everyone, and thank you for inviting me. As Nashata said, we have a close cooperation that's been lasting for years through our anti-discrimination checkpoint network, which was made to enhance the fight against discrimination on a regional and local level, and to make information available when discrimination is in question. I am happy that Milan Mitrovic, a member of the Human Rights Committee of the Ombudswoman, is here. So I'm happy to be among friends and partners. I'm very happy that after this report, which is an important source of data and evaluation of our work and questioning what we can do better and different, we will have many educations of legal personnel and Roman people. So I hope we can participate in this and support this kind of activities. I would like to start from the question of perception of discrimination. This research also talks about this, and it's backed by the research of the ombudsperson, which is conducted every 5 years. The data that almost 1/4 of the participants think that Romas in service industries reduce the number of clients. This is one of the prejudices that exists in the Roma community in the background. And for years, we've been trying to address this question. We can see through practice that the best response for that is the experience of differences in everyday life, and it's best shown by data about and experiences of the students in elementary schools in the county of Varaždin that showed that the schools with Roma and non-Roma children, more than 50% of children want to have a Roma child as a friend. And in schools where that experience doesn't exist, the percentage of children that are willing to do that is much lower. So education is key and very important. And the comparative report is saying something about these challenges in the field of education when talking about the Roma minority. We all remember the verdict for case Orsush about segregation in Roma classes. A whole set of activities was conducted after this verdict, but today we still have a lot of classes with just Roma students. When talking about education, I think there is one important thing to ensure a bigger success of finishing an elementary school education and participation of children in high school and higher education, and to have a better access to employment and stop this poverty circle, we need to support learning in early childhood and at the same time have an integrated education. I'll give you an example how education can influence further life of the participants of the Roma minority. It's one of the cases we had in the office. Uh, it's about a municipality in Slavonia, like many other municipalities and cities in Croatia. They had one-time financial support for families if they have a child. But when this municipality gave the criteria for achieving this, uh, one of the requirements was that parents need to live in the municipality, they could not be criminals, and the last condition was that the people needed to finish need to have finished primary education. This criteria discriminates people on education level, but in this municipality, you should know there's a lot of Romas, and when we know how many Romas actually didn't finish primary education in Croatia, we consider that this decision is indirectly discriminating on an ethnicity basis. After our reaction and recommendation, some of the criteria was changed, but the criteria of having an official address in this place stayed, which is also sometimes difficult for Croatian minority. When we're talking about education, it is impossible to not speak about the question of Roma housing. And the comparative research says that the housing conditions and communal infrastructure are very bad for the Roma minority. And we often talk about spatial segregation in Croatia. Uh, in It's very difficult to uh, go through uh, to come to them, and also they have a problem with legalization of their houses. This is also more important when we take the context in which we live. This is the COVID-19 pandemic, and we all know how much it influenced our lives. If the Roman minority is here very vulnerable, uh, because COVID-19 had a great influence on their lives. On one side, we have the question of education. The children uh, in Roma minorities whose main language is not Croatian had a problem because with distance learning, their education access was problematic, and they also have a great poverty risk and live in poverty. And the data that these families stayed uh, uh, didn't have different kinds of supports like meals for children, psychological support, and other things. So this is how the pandemic has affected them. On the other side, when we talk about measures conducted to stop the pandemic, it's important to say that it's hard to maintain the distance and hygiene in the housings where the Roma population lives. And there's a lack of continued measures. So it was usually just some random activities. The Roma often lost their workplaces, and uh, because we could not go from the places where we live, they also could not buy secondary raw materials. In the context of the pandemic, now we're talking about the availability of vaccination, which is also important. It's important to say that the national vaccination plan didn't recognize the Roma minority as a priority group for vaccinating, but as a priority, it put people living in collective housings and communities where physical distance cannot be made, which means that it kind of includes the Roman housings and households. In the same time, we have a situation where rules change. So vaccination was available for people who don't have health insurance in Croatia, which is important in the context of the Roma minority. But we can also see that at the start, 75% was interested in the vaccination. However, today we have a big decrease of vaccination and a big amount of spreading fake news and misinformation. So it's necessary to ensure the availability of information about the vaccinations, even to minorities and in their languages. I will shortly say something about the issue of the availability and non-availability of reporting cases of discrimination. It's something very important to us, and we're aware that the number of complaints we get does not reflect the everyday life of Roma in Croatia, and that discrimination is much more present than the data we see. The reasons for this are different, but the important thing for us is to see what we can do to bridge that gap between reported cases and unreported ones. Uh, the thing we surely change and in which we're much more active is that our office does not wait for the reports to come to our office, but we go to the field, to the Roma villages and talk with the representatives of the Roma minority, with their civil society organizations that work with them and with the people living there. And in that way, we try to increase their awareness and make us more available to them. We also saw in the comparative report a wish for a more proactive role of us in interventions and starting strategic lawsuits. We had a strategic lawsuit in about the education of Roma women and the not they could not do practices in schools, but this is one of the things that we hope to enhance in the next period. The thing we do every year is we follow the cases related to discrimination in civil cases, and we make a yearly analysis of the court practice in the area of discrimination, and the data from this analysis we usually use in our educations organized for judges and attorneys at law. So I hope that in these educations, after that will be included in this project, that we can report our experiences. I will stop here because I'm looking forward to hear the findings of this research, and I believe that it will be very important in making our yearly annual report. As you all know, in the preparation of the annual report made by the Ombudswoman to the Croatian Parliament, we usually use the data from researches made by civil society organizations and through recommendations given in the annual report, which also are related to the Roman minority, we try to uh, solve their problems more louder. Thank you one more time.
Thank you very much for your efforts to solve systematically the problems that Romas are facing, particularly discrimination. Before I greet our next speaker, I would like to ask all participants that are not muted to mute themselves so we could obtain a better quality of the sound and of the meeting. Now I would like to meet Mr. Alexa Jokic, the leader of the Service for Minority Rights from the Government Office for Human Rights and Minority Rights. He also has a long-term cooperation with various bodies. Mr. Jokic has always in and in our office, we are very glad to see this project unfolding as well as its goals. This is a relatively neglected or more neglected area when we talk about Roma inclusion. I believe that Tanya gave a fantastic brief summary on the problems of discrimination, but now I would like to give a broader context of the entire issue. When we talk about systematic or systemic undertakings, we have started those efforts in 2003 when, with the assistance of the European Committee, we initiated all of the projects, and also in cooperation with various organizations, particularly of the Center for Interethnic Dialogue and Tolerance Samalipe. One of the most important novelties that we introduced, and that are probably not so usual, is that we requested an independent external evaluation of the national plan and program, which clearly showed and pointed out the problems that we already identified. A great deal of the responsibility for the issues was transferred to local self-government units, which were not equipped or educated or didn't have the adequate capacities to deal with the issues. In continuation of our systemic attempts for inclusion of Roma in local and regional level, we tried to organize debates and discussions to foresee and plan our activities for the next period. In 2017 and 18, we conducted a broad research of our basic information. For the majority of the fields, we do not have this data, and we cannot follow the efficiency, we cannot monitor the efficiency of what we are doing on any level. That report was very broadly based, but it covered more than 350 variables on local level, and at least we can now very well target the measures that need to be implemented in various areas, and we can see and identify things that from the government people cannot see. This is something to remedy this in the future. We're going to try to remedy it in the future, along with the activities that we implemented and that were ongoing on the level of the European Union, as well as the implementation of their recommendation. We had the implementation of the new national program for Roma. And within this framework, we have a new element. I don't know what the situation is in Bulgaria, but in Croatia, we have more than 250 strategies for various areas. And this first national strategy for Roma inclusion is only one of them. And now we have a national framework within which various national documents have to fit in the national framework, national general framework, with very strict determinants. However, there were many determinants and delays in adopting the documents, so we were not able to start with the elaboration of the national plan in due time, although we were already prepared. That's why we formed a working group which worked very efficiently If I'm not wrong, some of the participants today were included in its work. It was formed after various public invitations aimed at the academic and NGO sector. We had the national strategy prepared, we had the action plan for Roma inclusion prepared, and we also had other activities, other strategies, particularly the one adopted in June. The elements that are important here today is it is important to emphasize that without a national plan, strategy or national plan, we cannot use EU means, EU funds. An action plan or a national plan is a prerequisite to reach towards various EU funds. The Vice President of the government was of great importance in the implementation in this national plan. But there is an important stipulation. One element cannot be repeated twice in these various documents. So we have a national plan for fighting poverty and social inclusion, and then the measures that are included there are not included in our plan. And this also refers to various other areas. One of the great novelties that we introduced with the national plan, and which should assist us a great deal in the prevention of having another decade without significant funds for overcoming the issues in the Roma communities, is that we should further develop the strategic documents. All of the member states of the European Union have certain problems in the development of such plans or strategies due to administrational issues or matters, because the administration is not prone to include novelties in plans or strategies. But the indicators we obtained will assist various projects on both regional and national level to implement everything that we plan. When we talk about IPC and a small number of other organizations in the Republic of Croatia, or when we mention them, the first thing that comes to mind is free legal aid. Naturally, this is one of the areas that is relatively neglected on this level. If you look at the national plan, you will be able to see that such things were identified as a special goal, i.e. it refers to the inclusion of Roma in the implementation of various activities. If you look at the national plan and if you compare it to the EU framework, you can see that the structure is mirrored. Naturally, we have a national plan that has special goals, but the general goal is to retain the national framework. We also have 3 horizontal goals, 3 sectoral goals. When we talk about anti-discrimination, it is something that permeates all goals. And in a way, those who are more familiar with the Croatian framework can see from the national plan the extent to which the office went in order to implement certain activities. So we are planning 7 or maybe 8 strategic projects. At this moment, it is important to mention that we do not have a partnership program. We do not have elaborated operational plans. We had a discussion yesterday, and the financing or the funding of the needs should not be endangered. However, a large part of everything that we are doing when it comes to anti-discrimination and free legal aid should be accessible via our office. According to the action plan, we believe that our public invitation will have results by the end of this year and in the course of the next year. And at the same time, we are waiting for the relevant national documents to be adopted. Those who have better memory can recall what we've already done in the project that we implemented in 2012. All of our documents from the beginning of our work or when we started working on our national plan are available on our webpage, including records of the meetings of our working groups, including documents adopted by the government. Apart from this, one of the government programs for 2020-2024 are the operational programs for various minorities, including the Roma minority. However, the topics that we discuss here are not represented to that extent in those documents. In any case, I'm very glad to be present here at this gathering today, and that important areas are covered, such as the housing problem, which is one of the bigger challenges in our work. And I look forward to our further cooperation. Thank you very much, Mr. Đokić, for your presentation and for the representation of the new national plan for Roma inclusion. We wish you great success in the realization of all your plans, goals, and visions that are stated in the new plan, and we will try to be of as much assistance as we can. Now I would like to invite our legal advisory, Željka Vukasović-Ravlić, who worked with me in various projects. Thank you, Natasha. Greetings to all. We can start immediately with the presentation. In the introduction, I will say a couple of words about the Information Legal Center. The ILS is a non-governmental organization registered in 2002, and it was founded as through the transformation of the international organization, International Rescue Committee. Its basic activities are promotion and protection of human rights, democratization of the Croatian society, education and empowerment of vulnerable individuals and the civil society. The results of the Croatian research in relation to Roma discrimination are as follows. In the Republic of Croatia, there are 16,975 Roma, according to the census conducted in 2011. However, according to other sources in Croatia, there are between 30 and 40,000 Roma, according to the estimate of the European Council and other international organizations such as UNHCR. The average age of Roma population is 22 years of age. The majority of Roma in Croatia speaks Croatian and Roma, Bayak and Romanichip. The Roman minority is the most vulnerable one from the total of 22 registered minorities. When we talk about perception of discrimination, in Croatia, there is 37% of examinees, Roma examinees, who declared that they had felt exposed to discrimination on basis of their ethnic origin in the last 12 months. They particularly emphasize discrimination in the field of education and employment, as well as institutional discrimination, particularly from employees of centers for social care. According to the research of the Ombudsman from 2016, 48% of Croatian citizens believe that Romas live on social welfare and that they have no intention or desire to work. That is the perception. Here we have several examples from our focus groups. For example, a woman from Beli Manastir in a focus group from Beli Manastir said the following: a year ago, I went to the market in Beli Manastir and a man told me in front of everyone, look at this smelly gypsy. I felt very uncomfortable and I felt poorly for days. That is one of the reasons why today I rarely go to the market and I prefer to go to the store. There was also a Roma woman from Slavonski Brod. She said, my sister ordered a taxi to take her to the doctor's office. The taxi was waiting for her in front of the church. But as soon as she approached the taxi, a police officer came to her and accused her in front of everyone that she was begging money in front of the church. She felt very uncomfortable because she was unjustly accused. And of course, there is one other example from Slavonski Brod. They mean the employers don't tell you directly you're Roma and that's why I'm not going to give you a job. They find other indirect ways to convey to us the message that we are not going to get the job because of the color of our skin. In relation to education, the results are as follows. 95% of Roma children in the age between 7 and 14 regularly attends primary education, but only 28% of them completes the education. 31% of children aged between 15 and 18 attend secondary education, but only 15% of them completes the secondary education, and less than 0.5% of Roma completes high education. There are many Roma pupils who attend education according to simplified programs because of their linguistic needs and poor education. And there is a huge disproportion in the number between Roma and non-Roma pupils in special programs, 20.4%. In the elementary school Hugo Badalic in Slavonski Brod several years ago, the relation between Roma and non-Roma pupils was accordingly 50-50, approximately 50-50. However, in the last several years, Roma children became a majority because the parents of non-Roma children decided to put their children in other local school because they do not wish their children to attend school, which is prevalently attended by Roma children. Then we have the participants of focus group from Slavonski Brod, who additionally gave an example from a secondary vocational school when one of the professors could not find his money, and then he accused the only two Roma girls in the class that they stole the money. They were felt very uncomfortable. They said they felt humiliated. Later, the professor found his money and apologized for his wrongful accusations, but it was too late and the damage was already done. So the accused girls wanted to leave the school before completing the education, but because they were extremely hurt and shamed for what had happened. And a Roman activist mentioned that there was a professor in his secondary school who humiliated him and said that he was filthy and that he learned that at home. When we talk about housing, there is a spatial segregation of the Roma population. In Croatia, 45.7% of Roma lives in remote areas that are separated from cities or villages. 16.5% lives in settlements that are in the fringes of cities or villages. And Roma neighborhoods usually have poor infrastructure and transport. They lack regulation, citizen permits for construction of adequate housing spaces, the inaccessibility to communal services infrastructure such as electricity, water, street illumination, as well as other contents that are necessary for daily life, which leads to social isolation. When we talk about employment, 44% of Roma are unemployed in Republic of Croatia, and only 12% of Roma are have full-time employment, and 41% of them never worked. The majority of Roma believe that the reason for their low employment rate is the low educational level, low skills, and as well as discrimination. A certain number of the participants of the focus groups face discrimination when trying to have practice as cooks, waiters, or seamstresses. Their experience was similar. They would call the potential employer, they would agree the practice, but when they would go there personally, then the employer would change their mind immediately with various excuses. And one of the participants of the focus group said that the employer looked as if he had seen the devil himself when he saw him. When we talk about the way in which the pandemic of COVID-19 affects Roma, there are numerous Roma children who live in households without computers, laptops, or tablets, and do not have access to digital content and cannot participate in online education. And although school classes are broadcasted via television, they do not contain preparatory education in Croatian language for children who do not have sufficient knowledge, like children who have Roma as their mother tongue. When we talk about discrimination of Roma women, it is important to say that Croatia has the largest portion of economically non-active Roma women in the European context, because only 8% of the total Roma female population performs some kind of paid job, while 40% of the Roma are households. Croatian Romas have the lowest rate of paid work in whole Southeastern Europe, because many of the Roma women perform temporary, interim, or occasional jobs and are not full-time employed. As for reporting of cases of discrimination, the national body that is competent for discrimination is the Office of the Ombudsman, and there are, of course, other specialized bodies. The Ombudsman jurisdiction covers instigation procedures on their own behalf, intervening before court, formal decision making on complaints. But in Croatia, since 2018, there was a significant decrease of the implementation of the recommendation of the Ombudsman by the competent bodies, because on average, only 20% of the recommendation is implemented, which shows clearly the lack of support of the parliament in the implementation of systemic reforms in fighting or combating discrimination. Since 2017, the Croatian parliament received the last 3 annual reports of the Ombudsman, but until present day, we do not know if those have been adopted. So this is only one of the problems that we face when combating discrimination. When we talk about focus group, the ILC organized 8 focus groups attended by 61 attendees. The majority of the participants of the focus groups believes that discrimination of Roma is mostly present in the employment sector, and the majority of the participants declared that they have never reported discrimination, and that they are not familiar with any such cases of reporting discrimination. When we talk about awareness about rights, in Croatia, attorneys and lawyers participated in focus groups believed that the act on combating discrimination is well written, but that it is rarely implemented in practice, which results with a small number of cases that end up before court, and that the court justice is very poor, and that there are also no training courses for police officers that would focus exclusively on the legislative frame for combating discrimination and racial discrimination, including racial discrimination and hate crimes. As for the recommendations, in terms of various national and local decision makers in Croatia, we have the following conclusions. Interdisciplinary teams should be founded, involving the police, centers for social care, schools, employment bureaus, regional and local bodies of Roma activists to coordinate and plan the different activities. Preschool education should be organized for Roma children in order so they could be able to learn Croatian and to increase their chances for success in the educational system. Roma children should not be put into special schools or classes without conducting previous basic estimate of their psychophysical capabilities. Financial enticements should be given to private employees for employment of Roma, and permanent training courses and strengthening of capacities should be also formed. We also have the following recommendations. It is necessary to strengthen capacities when it comes to laws about fighting discrimination, accessible and available legal remedies, so the activists could provide support. Informative campaigns should be directed towards marginalized groups within the Roma communities. That would include women, elder people, persons with disabilities, LGBTQ persons, in order to secure that to make sure that they are aware of their rights and the means that they stand at their disposal when they are facing discrimination. When we talk about legal experts, we have the following recommendations. Attorneys should be given incentives to specialize for anti-discrimination law so they could provide legal assistance and support to Roma victims of discrimination. And the legal experts that work in the field of combating discrimination should participate in raising the awareness in Roma about their rights and the available legal remedies when facing discrimination. Of key importance is the regular exchange of information between various legal subjects. So this is only a part of the recommendations, and the other information you can read in our comparative report that is available on our webpage. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Željka, for the introduction of our report. I wanted to say for all the participants, if you have any questions for us, for Željka, or previous panelists, feel free to put the question in the chat. At the end, we'll have enough time for a joint discussion. I would like to greet your colleague, Atanas Atanasov from Amalita, to present his research concerning the discrimination in Bulgaria.
Thanks a lot to Natasha and to Željka for your presentation, and it is a pleasure to me to be part of this meeting and to show the results from the report in Bulgaria. Actually, Natasha present myself, but my name is Atanas Atanasov and I work for Center for Interethnic Dialogue and Tolerance, Amalipe, which is based in Bulgaria. And actually, it is one of the biggest Roma NGO here in Bulgaria. And it is pleasure for us to be part of this project, which is named Equality for Roma through Exchange Legal Access. Some things about the methodology that we use about the focus group. The first thing what we do was to analyze the all document which is already prepared from the national reports or from the reports of several organizations. And after then we make 8 focus group. And actually, we make the focus group with member of the Roma community and the focus group with women of Roma origin. One focus group was organized with Roma activists, and two focus groups were organized with legal experts, and one focus group was organized with NGO employees. And a total of 65 participants, and 46 of them was women and 90 of them was men. When we speak about discrimination, the situation in Bulgaria is the same like in Croatia. For example, the key area where Roma are being discriminated is in education, housing, employment, and in healthcare. When we speak for education, the results from the report actually show that the school segregation of Roma is still widespread in Bulgaria, and the educational status of the Roma is significantly lower than both Bulgarian and Turks minority. And here actually I take one little part from the research which was done from Trust for Social Alternatives here in Bulgaria, which show that actually the education level of the Roma children is growing up. For example, from 2011, the children with higher education was 0.4%, but in the research from 2019, this percent growing like 2.6%, which is good for us. When we speak about housing, it is same like in Croatia. Some of the common situation in Bulgaria and in Croatia is that most of the Roma face poor infrastructure and transport in their place that they're living, lack of regulation and legal permits, lack of public utilities, lack of infrastructures. We can see that actually here I take some example from the focus group which we done here in Bulgaria, and one of the comment was that, for example, I submitted my documents to the labor office of the municipality in which I have a permanent address, expecting the office to call me for an interview when there is a vacancy from a local employer so that I can start working. The local employer announced that a vacancy at the labor office, to which I responded, but when I applied at the lower office, I was rejected. In one of my informal meeting with an employee at the labor office, I mentioned that I had been refused the job application without mentioning the reason of the refusal. When I asked the employee whether she was aware of the case and why I had been refused, she replied, "The boss of the company has specifically informed the employees in the directorate of the labor office not to send him employees of Roma origin because he will not hire them." And it is not only this case in the focus group. Some of the participants actually mentioned that before starting their work, they was rejected because of their Roma background. The second example is of this, which was mentioned again in the focus group. The men say these things. "I work as a priest for almost 20 years, and I was the only priest of Roma origin in the whole country. Once we were interviewed by the national media about our ministries and upcoming holidays. During the interview, I mentioned that I was a Roma. After the interview, he had priest called me to him and explained that I had no right to defame the church in this way, after which I was transferred to another monastery. This was 10 years ago, and I did not make a complaint because I don't believe anyone will do anything. And actually from this focus group, we can see that the people who attend this focus group say that they didn't trust to the institution, no matter which kind of the institution is, just they didn't believe that someone can help them. The third case again from the focus group was this from a Roma man. He said these things. Once a group of friends and I got organized and made a booking at the local disco. Visually, all groups seemed to be from ethnic minority because we are all little black. At the very entrance of the disco, we were refused entry, even though we had booked seats in advance. The staff excused being that there were no seats available and that all the seats were already taken, during which time they allowed other people to enter in front of us, but we were refused. It is a common case here in Bulgaria. Actually, it is done usually. And the second case from the focus group was again from Roma men who say these things. In our locality, there was a notice on one restaurant which explicitly stated that representatives of the Roma community were not allowed. This was a giveaway, but in some places there are still such establishments where representatives of the Roma community are not allowed. In some places, the restaurants put sign on the table in advance saying reserved. And when a customer comes in who looks visibly Roma, they are simply told that the table is reserved and there are no seats available. This is a common case again when a lot of Roma people go to the restaurant. Just in the entrance of the restaurant, they are rejected and they say that all the tables are reserved and they cannot take dinner or lunch. About the discrimination against Roma women. In the report, it's mentioned that discrimination against Roma women accessing in social services is very common. And in Bulgaria, Roma women often face discrimination in their access to health services. According to a number of young women at the hospital, midwives place pregnant Roma women in separate rooms in the gynecology and obstetrics ward. And actually, I have one example here that you can look. One Roma woman from a focus group, she told us a story from her experiments. She said, when it was my turn to give birth, there were two women in the room, both of them who looked like ethnic Bulgarians. In our room, there was another free bed. There was a woman in the corridor who looked like a Roma woman and was speaking Romani on the phone and who had been awaiting to be checked in for maybe more than 1 hour. This same lady was accommodated in a separate room with two other Roma women, their room being significantly different from ours. And our room, the bedroom and the toilet had been renovated as well as the room itself, while they were placed in a room that had not been renovated and the toilet was terrible. And actually, when we make the open event in Bulgaria, the ombudsman, the representative of ombudsman in Bulgaria actually mentioned that they also receive such kind of example in their research that Roma women face such kind of discrimination. In Bulgaria, high-level politician. One example, Simeon, Bulgaria from 2014. He said, the Roma are arrogant, presumptuous, and embittered human beings, demanding the right to wage without working, demanding sickness benefits without being sick, child benefits for children who play with pigs in the street, and maternity benefits for the woman with the instincts of street bitches. Actually, when we have election here in Bulgaria, in the most cases, the politicians use this instrument among the community, and they have done hate speech. Maybe many of you know about the violent protest in Gabrovo from 2019, which was burst out after a fight in which some Roma were involved. The protests in Gabrovo were highly politicized before the election, as many representatives of various parties appeared in the front lines of the protesters. The protests were a result of many factors, the key being the growth of hate speech against Roma and anti-Roma stereotypes and prejudice. And actually in the report we mentioned in detail the situation in Gabrovo, because a lot of family from the Roma background was need to go to other city because they were scared to stay in Gabrovo, and actually the police in Gabrovo actually told them to do the same things, not to stay in the city Gabrovo, but to move to their family if they have family to other city, because it is not good for them to stay there. The focus group participants in Bulgaria also highlight the distrust felt by the Roma community towards police officers, prosecutors, and the state institution in general. It was also mentioned that many Roma victims of discrimination do not know where to seek remedies, and maybe 80% of them, they say that actually they don't look for help from any institution because they didn't believe that they can help them, and they didn't know the way how to apply, for example, if they need some help. In Bulgaria, the legal practitioners who participate in the focus group interviews acknowledged that the lawyers' knowledge about the anti-discrimination legislation needs to be emphasized. The focus group participants without experience in the anti-discrimination field knew about or came across cases when we make this practitioner this is something that they must focus on. But on the other hand, the practitioner with who are familiar but not in detail with the anti-discrimination law, because they think that don't have to use it often. In Bulgaria, almost all people and groups face discrimination, but apparently it's more visible in the Roma community. This was one of the comments from one lawyer with no or less experience in anti-discrimination field in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, the Bulgarian prosecutor office does not take any measure to combat discrimination against the Roma in the criminal justice system, and it actively discriminates against them in some statement by its representatives. Capacity building on anti-discrimination legislation and available legal remedies is needed to needed so that the CSOs and activists can provide support for a Roma victim of discrimination. This is some of the recommendations that already Jelika mentioned in her presentation. Also, the capacity and knowledge of the legal practitioner about the anti-discrimination legislation, the available legal remedies, procedures, and case law should be improved. Discrimination cases and decisions of the equality body should be disseminated to raise public evaluate European Roma inclusion and participation project be ensured working free legal aid by the European Union, and targeting outreach campaigns should be conducted to marginalized group within the Roma community, including women, older people, persons with disabilities, and LGBTQ persons, to ensure that they are also aware of their rights and recourse available to them when they experience discrimination. Also, this was mentioned from Angelica in her presentation. Thanks a lot for your time.
Zaista
For the
evo ga, kao što sam rekla,
here
hvala.
it is. As I said, thank you, Atanas, for the detailed presentation of the part of the research that refers to Bulgaria. I am sure that some of our guests will have either questions or comments to your part of the research in the discussion section. Now I would like to invite our last speaker, our years-long associate, Milan Mitrovic, Roma activist, president of the Roma Youth Organization of Croatia and member of the Human Rights Council of the Ombudsman. Thank you, Natasha, for the representation. Greetings to all of you. I wrote down several notes here so I could respect my time limitation. I will tell you something about the beginnings of my work, and later on, if you have questions, you can ask me. So what made me engage in activism? Some examples were given from the focus groups, and those examples refer to me. I relate with them because I was exposed to discrimination within the educational system. And of course, such present discrimination perpetuates the low number of Roma included in the educational system. All of the slurs and all of those examples that you were given in the focus groups are highly relatable, and a couple of those were given by myself. The feel like present today at this meeting and presentation. I would like to thank Mr. Jokic, to ILC, to all of you. You are the people who assisted me to be here today at this position and to achieve certain things. And when I actually first addressed the Information Legal Center with an application to have a secondary school financed for implementation of minority rights, Mr. Djokic called me to inform me that the continuation of education was approved. And that's how I was uplifted in my activist efforts. And today I'm finishing my university education. So we can always say that every bad thing leads to something good, but the evil or the bad things should not exist to begin with. Discrimination exists within the Roma community too, in terms of when it comes to poverty, because poor members of the Roma community are considered to be less valuable. When we had the last invitation for housing, resolving of housing issues, people who were considered to be of low value for the Roma community were not even contacted. And that is not all. There is a series of such examples. Today, the power lays in information. If you do not have access to information, you cannot exercise your rights. And that's where we fit in, both activists and organizations. We are here to place the information, to make those information accessible to the people who cannot reach the information in regular ways. I would like to thank Mr. Djokic, who gave me instructions on how to deal with certain issues, how to conduct applications, and he was always at my disposal, providing me with adequate and timely information. Since I'm president of the Roma Youth Organization in Croatia, and since I myself faced a great deal of discrimination, the mission and the vision of our Roma Youth Organization focuses on the youth, early preparation for school, so as to enable equal opportunities for education. In order to improve the situation in general, we have to include the broader academic community. So we could provide the Roma community members with tools to become competitive, both in the educational system and the labor market, and as well as to make sure that they are able to participate in various cultural contents. I've participated myself in various focus groups, and there are many documents that are indeed necessary. Such documents should be made available and accessible to everyone. As far as the results are concerned, we should work more intensely with schools, employers, and all stakeholders who, in a way, are in a decision-making positions and can direct people towards better results. As far as discrimination reports are concerned, the rate is very low because there are no concrete protection mechanisms for the person who reports the discrimination case. The person falls into unfavorable position. There are court proceedings that are expensive. So what the Ombudsman's office is doing is a good thing, because at least in this way, we had on several occasions positive decisions, positive rulings. In the majority, these were persons who were directly tied or connected to me, because sometimes I myself told these people to contact the Ombudsman's office and to try to resolve the discrimination case or the court proceeding. That's all from me, but if you have any questions, I stand at your disposal. Thank you, Milan, for everything that you said and for talking about your personal experiences as well as the experiences of other members of the Roma community. I'm now inviting you for an open discussion, either through comments or questions that because you might have them for our speakers. We're going to have some 40 minutes for this discussion. You can either raise your hand via Zoom or ask the question in the chat section. Andrea, I would like to ask you to assist because my internet connection is declining. It's of poor quality, so maybe I will need assistance. Are there any questions or comments?
Ja, evo, naša vanjska stručnjakinja Jagoda Novak.
Our expert, Jagoda Novak, raises her hand. Jagoda has worked in this joint project as an external associate, and she's going to hold lectures and workshops with Roma activists, legal persons, etc., etc. Greetings to all of you. I don't know if you can see me. Since it is morning, it's maybe better that you don't see me. First of all, I would like to greet you all sincerely. I will try to turn on the camera. I don't know what is going on. We are not receiving a video signal. Okay, never mind. We will try to continue the discussion this way. First of all, greetings to all of you. Sincere greetings from the bottom of your heart. Natasha, thank you very much for including me in this excellent project. I have several questions, and at the same time, I would like to say hello to Milan, Tanya, Alexa, and all of you that are present here today, as well as our colleagues from Bulgaria, of course. My role in the project was the following. Natasha asked me this summer to create 3 manuals for 3 groups. The one is attorneys, judges, and other legal practitioners in the field of discrimination against Roma. The second group were Roma activists, and the third was general members of the civil society. We worked very intensely on that during the summer, along with our partners from Bulgaria and the other people who were involved in the project. In the course of the next week, I'm going to have trainings for various groups. Let me just say a couple of words about the manual, what it consists, what it deals with. So the Roma activists are familiarized with that, as well as the institutions. The manual is similar to the ones that already exist in areas in general, in the field of discrimination against young people, LGBTQ people, and it encompasses everything that a legal practitioner should know about discrimination, the reasons of discrimination, the ways it is manifested in our society. Discrimination, it contains a legal human rights. When a discrimination case is reported, applicant. Special attention is given to the institutional framework, which is also under the jurisdiction of the Ombudsman Office. And we elaborate on the advantages and the bad aspects of addressing various legal institutions. And it is going to be disseminated in a great number in the near future. It is important to mention that the situation in Bulgaria, in Croatia, in terms of equality overlaps. In 2019, Milan and I were in Bulgaria, and this level, this decision-making level, the people that are involved in the system, like people from the state attorney's office, are actually worse in dealing with various situations. And as you were able to see from various examples, the situation is Bulgaria is probably worse than here, although the situation here is also not pink. I wanted to ask the members of Amalipa if they addressed or they contacted various EU institutions, because they were people from Poland who worked in this area and who contacted the EU institutions. There is a decision on so-called decision on schooling network that was adopted in 2010, which should be amended if we want to prevent the existence of schools that are 99 or 100% Roma schools. So maybe we should instigate an initiative, for example, from the Office of the Ombudsman, to have this decision amended, because I believe that it was last amended in 2000 or adopted in 2010 by Mrs. Kosser. So this segregation of preschool education, elementary, secondary school, and in the employment sector should be combated in this way as well. So that's all from me now. Thank you, Jagoda. We look forward to the cooperation with you. I don't know who is willing to answer you. Mrs. Vlasic asked to reply. Thank you for the question and for the presentation. I would like to start from what you said, and then I would comment on the things we already discussed. The decision that Jagoda mentioned was already initiated as a topic, and recently the Office for National Minorities and Human Rights had a gathering about the education of Roma in the county of Varaždin, where in the context of the segregation of education, we discussed the various ways in which it could be conducted, or the decision could prevent such segregational classes. So this is something that we will continue to work on. We've already organized meetings for the upcoming period. And what I would also like to say is that we are looking forward to the manual and to its dissemination. Another thing that I would like to address is the question of our reports and the fact that they are not adopted by the Croatian Parliament. It is the fact that in the course of the last 3 years, they were unadopted. In June, we had a discussion about the reports from 2018, 2019, and 2020. They were acknowledged but not adopted. After that, we tried to advocate, and we are going to continue to advocate that at least those reports are going to continue to be acknowledged by the Croatian Parliament. But we hope that they are not going to vote on them. Why is that? Because it is not a report on our work, but it's a report rather on the situation the human rights situation in the Republic of Croatia, and potential voting or the voting process can produce or exert pressure on the institutions that deal with these institutions, with issues, on the institutions with these issues. Also, the recommendations that are given in the reports should be implemented. We instigated the process of appointing a coordinator for the implementations of these changes. So far, we have managed to gather coordinators and organize them on 2 levels. So now, so says anti-Gypsyism is not so present on local level. However, the comparative report shows that there is a specificity in the discourse, and there is a hate speech, particularly in the Međimurje County. Yes, the Croatian parliament received these reports. Now we are going to have Atanas respond to Jagoda's question, if you are ready.
Yes, of course. Thanks for the question. And actually in Bulgaria, we have this problem from around 10 or more years that the segregation in schools, it was a big problem. We start to work on desegregation of the school. For example, we make we take together several people from several organizations, and we make announcement or we make a report to the government, and together with the institution, actually we work on the desegregation together with the municipalities. And it is very important, the good work with the municipality, because most of the school actually are under the municipality law. So then we start to work with them for the desegregation of this school. And again, it was a problem because most of the parents take their children from the school and move the children in school that didn't have Roma children. And then it was difficult for the NGOs and actually for the institution to take control on the situation. But now the percentage of the segregated school actually are not bigger. Most of the school we try, and we are in touch with the institution how we can make this desegregation of them. But again, it is one point that in little villages, when we have, for example, villages with 100% Roma children, this school cannot be named like segregated, because most of the people who lived in this village or city are from the Roma background, and this is a not segregated school. They're just go to this school because they are not where they can go to study. And for this, we have segregated and desegregated school. I don't know that I answer in detail of your question, Andrea. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's a different
Mislim
question.
da jesi, ako ne
The panel reports by international NGOs like MRGI are the reports of this organization, do they influence Croatian and Bulgarian governments? I think recommendations that we got from some of these bodies are important. When we talk about the Romas, the most important one is the UN Race Discrimination Convention. I think they're important, and NGOs have a space to their alternative reports with we use this data and give a better picture and understanding of Roma population. The Ombudsman Office is the central office for anti-discrimination, but it's also an independent institution for human rights protection with an A status, which allows us to participate in the UN system and get alternative reports. When talking about this convention, Croatia is behind in its reporting, but we're happy that the government subjected the report to the UN board, and in the next period we expect that there will be a discussion about implementation of this convention in Croatia. We will be included with our national alternative report, and in our alternative report we already use their reports and other NGO reports. So they are important to us, but I believe they're also important to the government because they give guidelines how to go on. Thank you. Atanas, do you want to continue? Jagoda has an additional question regarding the discrimination on a political level.
Now I answer of the misunderstanding. For sure that actually the government, when we send such kind of report, they look in detail and, for example, I can give, for example, the national strategy of Bulgaria, which must to work together with the Roma NGOs, and not only Roma NGOs. They cannot make this strategy without connecting with the NGOs, and this kind of the report actually is very good, and they are treating the body of the some governments actually impact on them for sure.
Dobro. Hvala, Atanas.
Okay, thank you, Atanas. Alexa wants to say something. Thank you. I just want to say a few things. If we go from the letter, Tanya already mentioned the roundtable we had in Varaždin and an initiative that we'll have again. We'll try to solve the problem of segregation again in education. We're very aware that it's hard to solve it without solving the housing segregation. But the important thing for us is that Croatia is a relatively small country with a relatively small Roma population, which has its repercussion from the perception in public to the importance of prioritizing topics related to Romas in national bodies, but also with the capacities of the civil society, especially the Roma civil society. It's the area that's very busy for us. All other experiences, especially from countries with a longer tradition, with more Roma population, with bigger Roma population and more capacities, the way they solve these problems is precious. I was glad to hear Atanas's comment on how to solve segregation. Before this meeting we had in Varaždin, our national committee was in the biggest Roma community in Croatia, with almost 3,000 inhabitants. In the local school, 97% of students are Roma. We had a question of space inadequacy and how, where to build a new school. This was a hot question that no one could give the correct answer to, and all the elements for the discussion, especially foreign discussions, are important for us. I would like to add that aside from Milan's comment, he mentioned me personally a few times, so I'd like to say these are the things we do for everyone, not just for Milan, the Housing Commission and so on. We have an equal approach to everyone. We know that there is a lack of information in a local level, and we'll try to deal with it through some activities. One of them is strengthening the capacities of participants and Roma minority representatives, and also in field visits. Yesterday, I talked about that. From next week, we'll plan a wide activity of visiting the field and office representatives, ombudswoman office, to ensure that information are available in places in the lowest local office levels where I think they're not available. We had exclusive research, and I think that there shouldn't be any problem in spreading the information to everyone in a short period of time. Thank you. And thank you, Alex. Andrea is waiting to say something. Please go on.
Thank you, Natasha. I have two questions, actually. One is for Mr. Djokic. You mentioned the various national strategies and policies, and I'm just interested, according to your experience, how much the Roma community, through the representatives or organizations, are involved in the drafting of these strategies or in the monitoring of its implementation? That's one question. And the other one is for Mr. Milan Mitrovic. He mentioned that he faced discrimination from a very early age, even at school, and how what impact it had on his life. And he also mentioned that he received support from the civil society, and it means obviously that the civil society has a very important role in supporting victims of discrimination. I would just be interested, what do you think, how the national institutions should or could support, the victims, Roma victims of discrimination in these cases? Thank you.
I'll try to answer. On one side, we have a satisfying system of surveillance of national conducting national policies. We had a national committee with the government vice president, so there is some political ambition and willingness to approach this issue. For about 10 years, we had a number of Roman minority representatives on the political level. On a local level, it's much weaker, especially in the targeted measures and activities. We practically don't have local action plans or structures to do it. But what we do have is an act about national minority rights, and the Roma national minority is one of the 22 national minorities. They have a right to be represented in a local level, depending on their numbers. One of the recommendations of the European Council is that the number of people needed for this should be lower, but the minorities do not demand this. Milan could say firsthand something more about this. This number depends on the local relationship usually. So we have Roma representatives in two municipalities and some governing deputies in two that are Roma, and we had mixed comments about the relationship between them and the other officers. In one municipality, the local government deputy is a Roma person, and we have excellent comments about him. The weaker thing here is, except for these strong personalities on a local level, we don't have wider structures. This is not a problem just regarding Roma, but also other national minorities. Our local governments are very fragmented. In Croatia, we have 4 million people and more than 500 units of local government, especially in the rural areas where the municipalities don't even have the necessary capacities, and not to mention the minorities in them. So it's very hard to find the people to cover all these places and find the technical help to do some basic functions, which they have a right to. They have a right to access all the documents of the municipality board, and they can participate in all the discussions. I am not sure how much this is used, though. Thank you, Alexa. I just wanted to mention that our report, one of the recommendation is bringing a national plan, which was made right after we finished the report. So Željka didn't mention this recommendation since it was already done, which is great. Concerning the local action plans, I don't know if the government office for minority rights plans to do something like in the previous national strategy period to motivate local government to make the action plans. For example, in our county, ILC made the action plan for involving Roma population in the period between 2017 and 2019. It was a part of a project. The county parliament accepted this plan and our project ended. So this is an action plan that we did with the legal faculty, but it just became something written on the paper because we didn't have the capacity to realize the thing with the regional and local government, since they are not really interested in that. They just did the formal part, they accepted it, and that was it from them. I'll try to respond to this and give my personal opinion. Because of the weak capacities in a local level, I don't think that in every local government unit we need to make a special action plan, because on the EU level you have two alternatives: either the national plan or the measures that you bring. So if you don't have the capacity, if you just have like 3 people in your local government, how can they make a special action plan, especially if they don't have Roma partners who can participate with a part of activities? You mentioned the project that was also pushed with our office when we made some action plans in 2014 and 2015. In almost all counties, we made an action plan, but most of them were not realized. Of course, as I said, except for our office, none of them did the evaluation, and I don't even know how many lessons they learned from all of that. With this new framework that we have, and with the field visit that are planned on the locations, we hope to revitalize the thing by at least making them aware in the future periods what can be done. At the same time, our office is planning to open offices for local governments in the area of education discrimination, social cohesion on local levels, and similar topics.
Zaboravljam samo još jednu stvar.
I'm forgetting one thing. We would be glad if the cases produced in the frame of this project would be shared with us even in the draft phase. This is for Jagoda and the colleagues working on this level. You don't need to wait for the final version. Just share it with us. We have time and we'll be glad to comment on it with you.
Na ponudi.
Thank you for your offer. Milan? In relation to the issue of the national plan, you're well aware yourself that in the national plan for following up the national strategy, we as a council national action plan of the topics from the national on the action plan for it will be was specific from the first to the end to the 8th grade of the elementary school. I was an excellent student. It continued in secondary education. However, I had problems when it came to the evaluation of my work, starting from the professor who evaluated my religious orientation, the color of my skin, and therefore, in the end, I will just say that I was expelled from school. I don't want to dwell on the details. But then I received assistance from the Information Legal Center because I didn't have the knowledge or the awareness. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have a computer. So I could use them to write my complaints. Then they assisted me. They printed out some 12 applications. I sent them out to many addresses, and the employees of ILC assisted in various manners to complete those applications. From that initial contact, a year or more passed, and then a call came from Mr. Jokic after an education I attended in Osijek. Mr. Jokic to be there. However, if you do not have resolved certain issues, you cannot apply for certain things. In any case, it is good when you have persons who can recognize the person who is willing to invest in his or her education. And there are many people who are not willing to take the harder way, who will take the path of least resistance and alternative means of going through life. But if there wasn't the assistance of the ILC and the Human Rights Office, it is a great question if I would have ever been able to achieve my goals. And it means that I probably wouldn't have been in this situation here, or probably years would have passed until the moment I would have been able to undertake the first step in the achievement of my goal. So their assistance is of great importance. Thank you, Milan. We assisted you just a little bit. The rest of the work was all yours. I just now want to warn you all that we are approaching the end of our meeting. At 11:30, we are going to finish it. We have enough time for conclusion. I can also see that Jagoda wants to comment, and that will be our last comment today. There you go. I will try to say a couple of things briefly. Natasha, if you agree, the text of the manual before the final printing could be sent to the Government Office for Human Rights and Minorities' Rights and to the Office of the Ombudsman, so they can comment on the content of the manual before the printing process begins. I can change or implement other changes, suggestions, and comments. Since in the writing of the manual, I lacked several things, and those were not the analysis of the legal institutional frameworks or of various experts, but the analysis of the cases of ethnic discrimination in the Republic of Croatia. So maybe I would like to ask Tanya and the colleague in Bulgaria if there is any such statistics on this issue regarding cases, discrimination cases that ended before Croatian courts. That would be of tremendous importance, because in the main obstacles that we face, the distrust in the judicial system in Croatia and certain other obstacles that we are facing, our judges also do not have any obligation to educate themselves or to collect professional points. So they have the opportunity, but they do not have the obligation. So we can say freely that without changing the attitudes and the knowledge of implementing the legislative in concrete cases in the practice when it comes to discrimination, we will not be able to make a step forward towards the achievement of justice. So my question is, where can we find statistics that pertain to this? And naturally, Alexa, everything that you said about the monitoring on local level, I agree. Croatia is a very small country, so not every local self-government unit can have its own practice. They can they are not able even to complete the quorum on all their various councils, and this extends also to the central level. Thank you, Jagoda. Mrs. Vlasic is going to reply briefly. The statistic itself exists. The Ministry of Justice collects information and data in general about the implementation of the Act on combating discrimination in regards to the basics that are covered by the law. However, there is no case analytics included, so we do not have indicators about the nature of the cases. What we do have are rulings on these cases, because there is a legal obligation for the courts to issue such data, but the majority of the cases that dealt with discrimination are recorded and usually are given at the end of the year by the courts. The majority of the rulings are reported in a way, and these reports reach us. Maybe it is a good recommendation for us to make additional analysis on concrete judicial practices. Also, brief comment on the education of judges. It depends, in the majority of cases does not enter the analysis of the court cases. There is a small number of court proceedings led before the court before the courts in Croatia. So analysis of this data is not quite relevant. Probably we have the majority of them are 1 day or 2 day court proceedings. There was an education, a brief education in 2019, which was very brief. And we should also think about how to improve these as well. Thank you very much. Jagoda, thank you. We have a couple of minutes to say what our conclusions from today are. Jagoda, can you say a couple of words about the conclusions, or maybe I should do that? Excuse me, Andrea.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed the panel discussion. I also mentioned it at the Bulgarian event last week that for me, one of the very interesting learnings of this research was that the situation is really similar in both countries, although the population, the Roma population size is different, but they really face the same problems, discrimination, the same fields, and also when we examined the obstacles in their access to justice, the same issues came out. So basically, the fear of reprisals, the distrust of the institutions, and the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness of the different available legal remedies. So for me, one of the most important things would be definitely the awareness raising among the Roma community, and also, sensitization of the different political participants and different parts of the society. And that's what we are going to do in the next phase of our project. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I will give back the word to Natasha.
Thank you, Andrea. I will not repeat all of your conclusions. We saw the information from the presentation when it comes to discrimination of Roma in Bulgaria and Croatia. The majority of the discrimination cases are not reported, but in Croatia, more concretely, it does not pertain to the Roma specifically, but to the general population as well. So we need to organize various workshops to activate various platforms about the topic, or on the topic of reporting discrimination, on the education of the police forces, on the government institutions. We all together should work on creating trust amongst the Roma population towards the various institutions. ILC has been working for the last 10 years very intensely with the Roma population, and it is a fact that they still, or the majority of them, have or feel resilience towards various institutions. We present ourselves as an institution that works with them or for them, but it is more difficult for them to address other institutions. Well, this would be my final words for today. Thank you all for participating, and I hope that we will meet again at some future gathering. Greetings all. Greetings all.